The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-host and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on our live shows.
Broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network. The bandwidth for this episode of This Week in Guns is sponsored by Patriot Patch Company. PatriotPatch.co.
Welcome to This Week in Guns. This show is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network and Patriot Patch Company.
And the show offers commentary on the latest firearms industry news, information, and buzz. I'm your host, Shawn Heron, and it is my pleasure, as always, to introduce our panelists tonight. First up, welcome back the host of the Second is for Everyone Diversity Shoot, Second Amendment advocate, co-host of the Gun and Gear podcast, firearms trainer, and owner of Simon Says Train, Tony Simon. Welcome back, buddy.
Hey, glad to be here, Shawn. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Another one of our favorites, we've got two of them tonight, is a historical firearms researcher and host of C&Rsenal's Primer, Small Arms of World War I series, Othias. Welcome back.
Howdy.
Now, Othias, the last time you were on the show, you were actually sitting right next to us.
Yeah, I got to be in your weird office that has, I believe, the most awkward urinal I have ever seen in my life.
You know, until you came here, I didn't even know it was a urinal. I actually just thought it was a toilet. So I've been using it wrong, is all I want to say about that.
That was Nick, and he's into some weird stuff. That's usually not called a urinal.
I can't even imagine. It's old, but I don't know who designed that, if they understood how male genitalia works.
Yeah, I've never seen one like that before. I hope I never see one again. Guys, Patriot Patch Company, go check them out. PatriotPatch.co. They sponsor the bandwidth for this show, and also they have pretty awesome Patch of the Month Club shirts and all kinds of other things. Cleaning mats, which I've got right here, this 1911 cleaning mat, which is also a great mouse pad. So if you want to inject some style into your bench or your office, they make great options. PatriotPatch.co. Guys, let's get right into the stories. First one, feel good. Brownells donates AR-15s for school safety. And basically what happened is Brownells heard about a bid that some department made for school resource officers in North Dakota. And Brownell said, you know what? We're not going to submit a bid. We're just going to donate 9 AR-15 rifles to the Bismarck Police Department. And I think that's a pretty awesome thing. Brownell's doing a lot of great out in the community. And this is just another way that they're kind of supporting not only our police officers, but also supporting, having armed resource officers in schools. Tony Simon, what do you think?
I think Brownell steps up. They've helped me out with the diversity shoot. They've donated lots of stuff to us. And they've done what the anti-gunners claim they want to do, which is make kids safe. Well, they put their money where their mouth is. They came out with product, and kids are physically safer because they have, even though I don't agree with it a lot, they have a good guy with a gun on site with the ability to stop a bad guy with a gun easier and more efficiently than doing it with their hands. Or a pistol.
Definitely. Othias?
Yeah, here's the thing in the macro sense with Brownells. I've never seen them take a misstep in the past, 5 years. And I didn't start counting until 5 years ago, so they may have never done it. But every time you hear Brownells get involved in something in the gun community, their perspective seems to be laser focused on the current understanding of the gun community. It's not some data. NRA, whenever the NRA tries to engage, I feel like there's always this layer of, we're 10 years behind and we're not really that sure what people are into today. Mm-hmm. Brownells is right on top of it. And it's just impressive to see. Agreed.
And I do come from a position of kind of knowing what goes on behind the scenes there. I deal with Brownells a lot. I spend a lot of time with them traveling and, the guys behind all this stuff. In fact, one of the guys, Ryan Rep, is quoted in this article. They're doing good things. They actually get it. They know the community. They know who's in the community. And I agree with you. I haven't seen him take any missteps. This is a great thing. The chief of police, Chief Jason Stugelmeyer, says, with the support, we'll be able to get the project out quicker and we'll be able to have a more robust medical kit that we really wouldn't have had the budget for otherwise without the donation. So great job, Brownells. And go support them. Go to firearmsradio.tv and click on the Brownells ads.
By the way, that's not free to them. So
no.
if you're proud of them for doing that, what they're hoping business sense wise, yes, they're doing a good thing, but business sense wise, they're hoping for goodwill. So try to remember that. If you see a business that's doing something that you really appreciate, try to keep it in mind and find an excuse to spend an extra $5 with them,
Yep. 100% agree.
Plus, Brownells, isn't that one of the Firearms Radio supporters? I mean, you can go through them, through their links, and actually help the network out and help Brownells out. So why not?
Exactly. Firearmsradio.tv. Click on the Brownells link. Whatever you shop there, we get credit for it. So definitely, I agree and appreciate that, guys. Next story, FBI stats show almost 4 times as many people stabbed to death in 2017 than killed with rifles. Interesting. The Uniform Crime Report came out, and this is kind of what we all expect. This article written September 26th at Breitbart, but it shows that the category of rifles covers bolt action, pump action, single shot, semi-automatic, and those that the left describes as assault weapons. This is a quote. This means only a percentage of the 403 deaths attributed to rifles would have been carried out with an assault weapon. I'm doing air quotes there. Additionally, the FBI report makes clear over 50% more people were killed with fists and feet than were killed with rifles of every kind. And rifles just seem to be a target, especially AR-15 style rifles seem to be a target of everything. Othias, have you dug into these numbers at all? Have you read this article? What are your thoughts? Here's
the thing. Well, you're always going to see the more portable, more personal weapon as the implement of murder. So if the U.S. banned all handguns, you would think that the criminal element would just move towards rifles and that murderers would move towards rifles. I have a feeling you'd see a lot more. First of all, the criminal element would retain handguns as long as they could. And then even if you melted every handgun in existence down, I don't know that you'd necessarily see somebody go from handguns back up to rifles. You probably would see a lot of knives and hammers and things like that, because a big part of the criminal element is not that they go out and they plan a murder and they execute a murder like people tend to think of. Because, the big ticket stuff in media is mass shooting or something like that, because it's so outside the realm of the normal that it draws attention. It's like, who would step out and intentionally do this sort of thing? That's how rare it is that we are still surprised and shocked by it. The common element in murder is that it's just, aggression and opportunity and, usually some form of spite that's happening at that very moment. It's usually crime of passion. And so it's what's on hand. So if you're someone with a sort of criminal mindset, you constantly carry a knife or a handgun, those are going to be the weapons you go for because they're the weapons that are on you. And no matter what you do to get rid of those, they're just going to reach for the next thing that they happen to carry around in their pocket because there's Mr. Tough Guy, bad guy. And it's weird, but there's two sides of people that want to be armed all the time. There's the citizen who is aware of the dangers out there, and there's the criminal who is also weirdly aware of the dangers out there, plus wants to be able to be a danger to someone else in order to extract money or resources or whatever. So I don't know. The whole rifle argument to me is just weird because I don't really want to argue one way or the other with it, because the rifle is just not part of the criminal argument, period. If you want to have a debate about quote unquote assault weapons in private hands, then you can talk about things like, mass shootings and stuff like that, because that's where they tend to turn up. Fine. Whether or not they have a significant impact, that's a whole separate argument. But if you're talking about murders overall in the U.S., you sort of have to admit that mass shootings are a statistical anomaly and almost impossible to legislate around. And if you're looking to reduce overall deaths, period, in the U.S., then you would really probably focus on tearing apart the foundations of criminal enterprise.
But if we're going to talk about overall deaths in the U.S., and assuming talking about firearms, you also have to talk about the 60% of that number that's suicide.
Yeah.
So, okay, it's opportunistic. They use the thing that's there. They use not many people. Some do go out and buy a handgun just to commit suicide. If they have a long arm and they want to commit suicide that way because of the pretty much 100% positive results of using a firearm to take your own life, they don't care which one you use. Sorry. I don't buy into it. And it's just a bigger problem they're trying to make it, and rifles aren't the problem anyway, as this shows. Their argument is disingenuous. Their whole thing is an attack on the Second Amendment, because remember, the Brady campaign really started out as Handgun Control Inc. That's what they tried to do the first time, and the American public weren't buying into it. So they had to change up and start attacking assault rifles.
Yeah, it's just funny that these statistics show that they're just not being used. They're not being used to murder Americans, and the number was incredibly small. What did it say? 403 deaths.
To be fair, we're going to hear the term assault rifle over and over and over again until they manage to get a quote unquote ban on them, which they had for a while. And then next thing you know, the attention gets turned to semi-automatic rifles, because what they'll do is they'll coin the term assault weapon. We all assume that means, select fire. Then, as things settle in, they go, hey, you know what? These semi-automatic rifles are exactly the same as the assault weapons because they can fire semi-automatic. Like, they're going to turn around and go from sort of wanting people to not realize that an assault weapon is not an assault rifle, and they're going to suddenly want you to think that an assault weapon is equivalent to a hunting rifle. That way they can then slip over a ban for those. And once they have all the semi-automatic rifles, they'll just go, these hunting rifles for these lever guns, because this is what we see in Australia, is like they went after lever guns very recently, because they're like, well, you can fire almost as fast with a lever gun as you can. Like, it's just the walk down. Like, we'll get rid of select fire, then we'll equate semi-automatic to everything, then we'll get, and it'll walk down until it's just like, look, if it goes bang, it's a gun, it's dangerous. And that's just the ultimate goal, is to walk it all the way down.
Yeah.
They showed their hand in their terminology, when the naval yard shooting was done with a guy with a shotgun. And that's when I first heard assault shotgun. And they've used that a couple of times. So yes, they have it. Your hunting rifle with a scope, your granddad's rifle. If you're one of the FUDs that doesn't think anyone should have an assault rifle, AR-15, well, they're coming for your sniper's rifle next that you have at deer camp.
Yes.
I agree with that. Bolt action rifles will become quote unquote sniper rifles. Like, whatever it takes to sort of bring it around to a sensationalized title that you can sort of equate to an experience. The biggest thing is honestly, what they do is they look for terminology that evokes a reaction based on movies, like what they've seen on television and movies. And, a lot of that stuff is dialed way up to the extreme to look dangerous and, cool or whatever. And
I think Maj Toure did a debate with Vice and some anti-gun lady, and the term she used for 80% was assassin's weapons. That's the only people that use 80%. It's an assassin's weapon. And I almost threw my phone through the window because I was watching it on my phone.
That's been done before though, because that's what they did with suppressors. And, the funny thing is, the same patent that covers a suppressor was the exact same patent for car muffler. Like, both were protected by the same thing. So the fact that your neighbor doesn't tick you off every time he pulls back into the driveway with his car or motorcycle or whatever is the exact same patent and application as what the silencer or suppressor was supposed to be for early firearms. It was supposed to be to protect your hearing and to not annoy your neighbor. And yes, obviously a quieter firearm lets you use it more discreetly, but why are we assuming that the primary reason for quieting a firearm is to break the law, when in reality, the most common reason to do that is for courtesy?
Yeah.
And another thing they used back in the day was poaching. People were going to poach animals off season, as if being in the middle of the woods shooting a deer, you would hear it anyway if you went in the woods also.
Yeah, or be able to identify where it came from or anything like that. Next story comes to us from AmmoLand. They took a look at the same data that Breitbart did. They came to some different conclusions, but very similar. They came at it from the violence is down. Violent crime, violent murders, they are down. Jeremy Posderick from We Like Shooting often says, we live in the safest time that humanity has ever had. We've never been safer as a society, especially in America, than any society in history has been. And this kind of shows that. There were 17,284 murders in 2017, a rate of 5.3 murders per 100,000 people, and represented a 1.85% decrease in the murder rate. So very, very interesting. The last line of this article actually is a little bit of correlation and causation thing. It says, keep in mind the decrease in crime is occurring as record number of Americans are obtaining permits to carry concealed firearms. I'm not sure we can make that jump, but things are down. Things are down, and that it's a big number. We live in the safest time, yet, anti-gun people, they want to make it seem like we live in the Wild West. Tony, what are your thoughts?
I've heard it even from people who aren't anti-gun. Oh, I wouldn't want to bring up a kid today's age. And I'm like, today's age? You mean when your kid can be healthier, have a high body weight? Of course, I'm talking about body weight when they're born and just be overall healthier than any children ever, have access to health care that no one pretty much in the world, in the history of the planet, has ever had. These are the best times to grow up.
Yeah.
And yeah, it takes a little more work now because there's a lot more distractions. It's not growing up in Mayberry RFD. But guess what? All parents had to work no matter when it is, and we have a lot of advantages.
without question. Othias?
Well, I've heard, I can't remember where I was hearing it, but there was a comedian who made a joke. It's just like, maybe Chris Rock or somebody who's just like, everybody talks about if I had a time machine where I'd go to, and it's just like, well, I don't know, as a black guy, I don't want to go anywhere past like 1970. Like that's as early as I want to go. But the same thing.
I'm stopping in 91, baby. I'm stopping in 91.
It's not until Will Smith is a national treasure that everything calmed down. Right? But,
yep, exactly.
It's one of those things like, it applies all the way around though, because people like to glorify the past, but realistically, crime rates in the 50s, for violence and things like that were much higher, much, much higher than they are now. And it's just that you didn't get it sensationalized and poured down your throat by a 24-hour news cycle. And it's one of the things I was talking to somebody else and I was just like, it'd be cool to go back and see some of this stuff, but I like indoor plumbing and, sanitation and even just hearing the understanding of like medical, it's just medical concerns from 1970 to now is so much better and it's going to keep getting better. The other thing is I think this is really played down, but a big part of why violence is down in especially like the US and other things, we've really moved towards talking to our kids about understanding other people's perspective. And to some degree that's gone a little bit too far because we expect everybody to sort of be polite beyond their own needs. So we have an outrage culture where if you offend somebody or appropriate something or if you accidentally say something that can be construed as a negative, and then when you are called out for it, you go, I'm sorry, I did not mean for that to be a negative. That's not an acceptable answer anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I meant no harm to anybody. I'm very sorry. That is like, you could still get shouted down for that sort of approach. So we become a little too sensitive, but up to a certain limit. The big thing is that people understand that who they're looking at across the table is another person. And so that's why I don't like these methods that sort of dehumanize when people start talking politics or opinion, because it's sort of this complete understanding that other human beings have merit has really been the biggest thing to settle down crime. And then because, we are concerned about the world around us, because we are invested in our own society, that's why you're probably seeing more concealed carriers. Like most concealed carriers don't do it because they want to go live out in the woods and never see another human being. They do it because they're thinking about their responsibility and their role in the society around them. They see it as a public good. And so I'm not saying that concealed carry would drive down crime rates. I'm saying that by the natural course of people being sort of more aware of the world around them, they're going to commit less crimes and they're going to be more responsible for themselves, which means more concealed carry permits.
Yep. All this discussion of like going back in time and healthcare and stuff like that reminds me of a tweet that I once said. It was like, being an old timey doctor would rule, just be drunk as hell all the time. Like, you got ghosts in your blood. You should do cocaine about it.
Yep. We have cocaine, heroin, and straight alcohol. That's all we have, and leeches.
Exactly. I think I've got ghosts in my blood. I don't know. Oh, geez. Next story, Pink Pistols and Operation Blazing Sword join forces for gun rights. This came out at an event, which I'm actually drawing a blank of what it was. Oh, the gun rights. Yes, Gun Rights Policy Conference. Thank you. That's exactly what it was. Two of the gun industry's most prominent LGBTQ pro-gun organizations, Pink Pistols, Operation Blazing Sword, teamed up to better enhance the fight for gun rights for all. They announced their merger at the GRPC, held in Chicago in late September. And let's see, it was Gwen Patton is stepping down from her leadership role. And Aaron Paulette is kind of stepping in as taking over the new merged organization. And Tony, correct me if I'm wrong here. But, this is good. I think sometimes we disperse a lot of our force because we all join these like different little advocacy groups, whatever it happens to be. And I think them joining forces is a good thing. Othias, what do you think?
Are they both retaining their own names or are they merging like the whole charter and everything else?
It seems like they're right now maintaining their own names from what I've seen.
How did Blazing Sword get their name? Do you guys know?
I don't know.
Aaron came up with that name, and it's Operation Blazing Sword. And yes, I know it was the invasion of Africa during World War II, and that North Africa, and that's their patch. That's actually one of their patches before they came over there on design. You could use that.
I guess they really want to stay away from Flaming Sword just for the negative connotation. It's like the first thing that comes to mind, and I almost feel like you should own it. You know what I mean? Like,
true.
But Honest to God, like, I'm very happy to see more inclusive groups come to firearms ownership. And let me tell you, if you're the kind of person who's absolutely rabidly anti-gay, you still would probably prefer that they go ahead and at least share one of your values. You know what I mean? Like, never alienate support, even if you find another reason to disagree with someone, because, you know, the world is made up of a lot of ideas, and you are not going to find a lot of human beings that share all of the things that you want to accomplish. And so, you know, even if you have a problem with being associated with this person or that person, take their support when you agree, and then disagree about what you disagree with on that venue. Try not to wrap everything about a person into one package that you must accept or decline. And so, if you're out there and you understand that the Second Amendment is there for all of the people in the United States, then you and I can share that just fine, no matter what else your opinions are. I might not want to, like, go camping with you if you have certain other, like, issues, and I don't mean LGBT, but, like, I don't know, if you belong to some NAMBLA organization, I'm probably not going to want to spend a lot of time hanging out with you.
No, 0 is the number that I would choose.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'll still take your vote on, you know, pro Second Amendment, or if we share a concern about the Fourth Amendment, I would love to see more people back the Fourth Amendment, you know?
Oh, that was a terrible example. Like, NAMBLA, like, no, I don't, Pink Pistols, what? Blazing Sword, absolutely. NAMBLA, never.
No, I was making an example of something that would absolutely most people would oppose getting support from.
Yes.
But at the same time, don't throw away one vote for your cause just because they're going to vote for something else the next day that you don't approve of. You know what I mean? Just vote against them per topic.
Yeah.
And this is what I have a problem with. Aaron's a friend of mine. Mm-hmm. Met Aaron at NRA in Atlanta for the first time in person. Aaron's doing awesome stuff. Came up with Blazing Swords after the nightclub shooting down in the gay club in Miami.
Yep.
Yeah, Pulse nightclub shooting. And it was just so organic, much like what I do. Aaron is a shooter and just wanted people who are NRA certified instructors, figuring that's the lowest common denominator of instructor, but they have a great program to introduce people safely to firearms. Went online, went on Facebook and said, hey, if you're in a state, any state, just let me know if you're willing to instruct LGBTQ people in just basic firearms use. Just let me know if you're willing to do it for free. And figured a couple of people do it. 50,000 answered.
Oof, that's awesome.
I mean, and she was like, I don't know what to do with this, and just slowly worked it through to become what she is now, which is awesome. And I can't be more proud of her and what she's accomplished.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's an excellent program because here's the thing. Agree or disagree with someone, they have a right to self-defense. That's what a right is. You know what I mean? You can't talk yourself out of a human right. You know, you can probably felony yourself out of a human right, but you can't, who you settle down with, who you're attracted to, all that stuff. It's your human right. And then especially after that shooting down there, I agree. One of the first things that you might want to look at is self-protection, because ultimately, you know, we're talking about the world being really fair. And I think that's something a lot of people forget, is that the world is actually very violent and very unfair. And we, the people, have made it fair as we can. Like, we do whatever we can as human beings to construct a very artificial version of the world in which we are safe and everybody's taken care of. We're respectful of each other because we're communal, sort of like social species. And this Second Amendment issue really gets down to the individual right to see to your own security, to see to your family's own security. And, you know, I welcome any of this sort of things from these organizations that bring in people who did not consider that they had this right or that they could exercise it.
Yep. And I 100% agree. And that's what Diversity Shoot does. And it's a human right.
Yes.
Because a lot of people get caught up. It's civil rights. No, it's a human right to self-defense. Being a human being. You should be able to defend yourself against someone trying to take your life, regardless of anything else.
This is great news. Patriot emphasized that all local Pink Pistols chapters would still be free to conduct business as usual with no dictatorial influence from the national side of the Pink Pistols. However, Pink Pistols members will now benefit from the ability of Operation Blazing Swords nonprofit status, allowing members better access to much needed funds and resources. And like Maj Toure has said multiple times, he said on the We Like Shooting show one time, he's like, look, y'all need us. We never expected to live past 21. You know, if it ever, you know, if we ever have to overthrow a tyrannical government, like, you need us. We're out here fighting. We're warriors. And it's like, that kind of changed my perspective on things. I was like, yeah, I think that was the point. I'd always given it lip service. I had always said, you know, no matter what, I do support everyone having that right to self-defense. But I think that was the moment where it went from me saying it to me truly, fundamentally, as a core of my being, believing it. And this is just exactly the same thing. Different groups of people all coming together under that one banner because we can all believe in something so fundamental and profound.
You know, it's a natural extension to, I don't know if you guys saw in the news where somebody got in an argument about pro or anti-abortion, and some dude roundhouse kicked some lady's cell phone out of her hand and maybe hit her face or something. The point being is he physically assaulted her, even though both of them were engaged in an argument about ideals. Mm-hmm. And so I think this kind of comes back to the fact that, like, you and I can disagree on politics and all sorts of stuff. We can vote differently. We can vote against each other. If it's a values or morals issue, you know, all these sorts of things can be argued, and you can get very passionate about it. It doesn't give you the right to sort of invalidate somebody else's autonomy. You can't attack. You can't harm. And it feels like in a lot of ways the Second Amendment is sort of it's that enforcing clause in the social contract where at some point someone might push the social contract so far out of bounds that they are no longer sharing the contract with you. They have no longer preserved the humanity that exists between you. And at that point, your life is threatened, or perhaps you're threatened with rape or some sort of other gross bodily harm. That is when you can use that clause, that Second Amendment clause, to make sure that you enforce your own humanity, that you now have a protection in and of yourself that's inherent to your person. And thank God that we have implements that allow us to do this regardless of, like, age or strength or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very, it's one of the most equal measures that we have nowadays that was not available 100 years ago. Might used to make right.
Yeah, 100% agree. Good stuff, guys. I guess changing gears just a little bit, Daisy is set to release adult-sized Red Ryder BB guns for a limited time. This comes out, looks like it's going to be kit number 1 retails for $69. Kit number 2 comes in slightly higher at $99. The difference there is 2 pairs of shooting glasses. 1 is an adult and youth Red Ryder exclusive. And I love how they include the shooting glasses as part of the package, because no one wants to shoot their eye out, guys. No one wants that. It doesn't say what the specific limited time is. Maybe that's just a marketing gimmick, but I could totally see myself buying one of these. I think that I absolutely might. Tony, you?
No.
Well,
no, Red Ryder was the one for me. I had the Crossman pump. I had that Crossman American. That's the one I had. I mean, this is a great nostalgia piece. Yeah.
Did they scale the whole thing up except the BB, or did they take the same action and marry it to a longer stock?
So I'm looking at the pictures, and the pictures look like even the action is a little bit bigger, but
it really does look like it's just a bulkier stock, though. The forend and stuff don't look fully scaled. I'd have to see if it's a true scale up, I'd be more interested than if they just sort of made a beefy stock for it, because it's not quite the same thing. Like, it's kind of like, would you want to ride a giant big wheel? Like, if someone made a big wheel that was just the size of a grown adult, would you want to sit on that thing and try to go down the road? The answer is yes, you know?
Yeah, same.
But if you just put a really big seat on a regular big wheel, I'm with you on that. That would be boring. All right. I thought that was a fun one. The next story, federal court rules it unconstitutional to strip 2A rights over a second DUI. This comes to us from Josh Prince and attorney Adam Kraut. The name of their organization is the Firearms Industry Consulting Group. They basically took this to court. A guy in 2005 had a DUI, a second DUI, and had been basically precluded from having a firearm. And they took it to court, and the judge actually, in I think it was a 21-page opinion, said that the government had not proved their case, and that it was exactly what they said, unconstitutional to strip those Second Amendment rights because of a DUI. There's a lot in this, a lot of legal jargon and things like that, but I think this is good news. I mean, it's a nonviolent crime. The government didn't prove that the society was more in danger because of him having a firearm because of this felony, but I don't know. Othias, what do you think? I think the biggest predictor for violence is violence. So if you are being violent or negligent Actually, let me put it this way. If you're being violent in general and you commit a felony, then you probably should lose your gun rights, unfortunately. I'm sorry to say, because the biggest predictor for now, there should be an annulment process or something. There should be some sort of appeal that you can go through counseling or whatever and learn to control yourself and then get your rights back. But we do have a system in which at a certain level you do lose certain rights if you commit heinous crimes. So DUI is a pretty heinous crime, but it's not a violent crime, but it's also a crime of irresponsible use. And so that would lead you to not want someone to, if I'm willing to operate a car drunk, am I willing to operate a gun drunk? That's a hard question. So I think was he interacting with his firearms at all? Did he have a firearm on him, while he was drunk? If the answer is no, then obviously it doesn't reach over. If it's a non-violent crime and there's no, use or utilization of a firearm while inebriated, then I don't see how it would transfer to Second Amendment rights. Now, if you say you pulled him over for drunk driving and he was concealed carrying while way over the limit, we can start to argue this is getting into some very negligent territory and we may want to suspend rights until he completes a program. My problem is I don't know of any programs that they have laid out to allow people to get their rights back that are clearly labeled that you could clearly go through. I'd like to see more of that, honestly, before I see things getting taken away from people, which is, okay, we need to take this away from people because they're being irresponsible, but we need to give them an avenue to get it back. We can't just sort of declare them half or non-citizens for the rest of their lives.
Tony Simon?
That's one of my problems with it. I'm on the side of freedom here. It's way too easy, especially in a state like Jersey. They love taking your rights away without giving you an opportunity to ever get them back. And I'm glad Josh and the guys won this one because it bodes well. It sets precedent, I think, and just puts it out there. It's case law, right? That's what they call it when something like this is won. Sorry, but one has nothing to do with the other. Just because you like a drink doesn't have anything to do with the fact you had to get your car home from where you were drinking. That's ridiculous to try to tie the two together. And what people are trying to do is just continually tie things onto the Second Amendment.
The other interesting thing is you can suspend a license, but a license is not considered a right. So it's trickier, I think, and you have to meet a much higher burden of proof to, instead of suspending a license, to take an actual, amendment dictated right.
Yeah.
I agree.
It is a very interesting one. Next story, Albuquerque is now the robbery capital of the United States. This one's interesting because I was actually just there and every single person there warns me ahead of time. If you value it when you come to Albuquerque, I was there teaching a medical class and force on fours. And if you value it, do not under any circumstances leave it in your car because it'll be gone. But it's not just an auto. It's kind of crazy. It's just all these robberies. Tons and tons and tons of robberies from sandwich shops, pizza delivery men, nail salons, even ice cream shops. All of them were robbed in 2017. Albuquerque, overall violent crime 4th in the nation, murder 48th, rape 50th, robbery 1st, overall property crime 1st, motor vehicle theft 2nd.
Is this strong arming to get cash in hand, or are we stealing objects? What are we talking about here?
I think property crime would be the objects. Robbery, I'm not sure what the legal definition of robbery is. But it seemed to be, assault. It seemed to be money. Also. Yeah. Aggravated assault also.
If you're seeing a lot of actual strong arm style robbery, then that means that you're dealing with a very cash economy. Cause when economies move away from cash, robberies go down because there's no yield. There's nothing to gain. So I wonder if Albuquerque has a uniquely cash economy for some reason. Strong, Latin American immigrant populations tend to avoid banks. So that could be part of it. But I don't know. Yeah,
it was kind of interesting.
Keep Aaron out of there though, because he loses cameras in Vegas. So, and who knows what happened to him in Albuquerque?
That guy, you can never know what he's going to lose next. This is an interesting bit of news that I saw come out, and I thought that it might be interesting to discuss here. But basically, 400 guns were stolen from UPS, and two guys basically walked in with a U-Haul. I haven't been able to find specifically what they were and just took them. 364 Ruger firearms. This article from, NBC News says 364 Ruger caliber firearms, which that doesn't even make sense as a sentence. But 364 Rugers, they just basically got them, took them, and then they were actually caught, which is another good thing. They were doing something. Someone called in suspicious activity in a parking lot. The police showed up. They were questioning them. The guys ran. They caught one. The other one is in the wind, but they did recover all the firearms, which is kind of a good thing. Tony, what are your thoughts?
Until you said they caught them, because I didn't know. I would have thought CIA's dropping guns off in the hood again. Well, I'm like, come on, dude. How would you know that the UPS place has 400 guns on hand? How to get to them, where they are in the building, how to get away. And it's not, that was a caper, dude. You have to rent a truck. It's not like, hey man, I had some extra points on my credit card and I just rented this UPS van. What do you want to do? I don't know. Let's go and see if the gate at the UPS place is unlocked.
Yep. And they were on their way to Chicago too, which is also interesting.
Hey.
Yeah, it's if I'm looking at it, honestly, it says they're all Ruger. It says 364 Ruger caliber firearms. Does Ruger have their own caliber?
Right.
Yes,
that's what I was saying. I was like, that doesn't even make sense as a
not even a cartridge caliber. Ruger caliber.
Yeah. Ruger has their own. I think it's 416 Ruger or something like that. They have a couple of calibers.
Yeah, but anyway, that's just bizarre. So were they all Rugers? Because if they were all Rugers, then it must have been some sort of bulk shipment between like one distributor and another.
Yeah. It has to be inside job, clearly.
Yeah, and so to me that means that somebody in that chain of custody decided to take a Instagram or Snapchat picture and tell their homeboy, and then they went, oh, this is a good score. Of course, the silly thing is it's such a big score that of course you're going to stand out. Like, it's bizarre. It doesn't look like they had a thought to how to break them up before too long, because they got most of them back in one go.
Yeah, they were just driving the U-Haul truck to Chicago, apparently.
To be fair, they'd have sold out in Chicago.
Yeah, they'd have been done quick. Next story.
Wait a minute. How many guns did Jeremy order for his shop?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if he was in on it, but next story.
I want a hog leg. I'm going to cross-draw it.
Oh, geez. Don't even get me started. Dallas police report to shooting scene 55 minutes after receiving numerous 911 calls. This is an interesting one. The headline is a little bit misleading. Basically, the 911 operator, the dispatcher, they just misprioritized the call. So they never showed up until 40 minutes after people had heard gunshots and screaming and whatnot. They called back, and then the next dispatcher registered it as a priority one, which they got there 12 minutes later. So 12 minute response time for shots fired and people screaming and all that, but basically took almost an hour. And I just thought that was an interesting illustration of we're on our own out there. Like, police have no duty to protect, and first response, you never know what's going to happen.
Even if they had a duty to protect, let's say you could sue over it.
Yeah.
That's good. Your next of kin can sue over it. That's wonderful. Any institution, any agency is going to have mess ups. You know what I mean? Nobody's perfect. Even if everybody was doing their job to the best of their ability and was focused, there will be mistakes like this. It just happens. Mm-hmm. It's human nature. And then add in the fact that not everybody is perfect and that there are people that are like, not so great at what they're doing or not so attentive. And let me tell you, if you ever want to convince somebody that they need to own a gun, especially say a woman, there was a 911 call a few years ago where the woman was being kidnapped and she managed to get her phone to call 911 and she stuck it quietly down the seat and she was just talking to the man. I mean, the woman was brilliant and she's talking to him, giving away where they are, where they're going, what kind of car they're in. She gives away all the information necessary to identify and find her and save her. She was raped and murdered because the 911 operator was just going, ma'am, what are you talking about? Ma'am, answer me. Ma'am, answer me. Ma'am, answer. I mean, just wouldn't stop running her own mouth to hear what or contextualize what was happening. Didn't get anybody else involved. Just, I mean, absolutely ignorant.
Wow.
And it happens. Like people are dumb. And even when they're not dumb, stuff like this happens where prioritization falls through the floor. You need to be in a position where you can take some action for yourself. Have a little bit of first responder training, have a firearm, have a little sense that, not everything's going to go your way every day of your life.
Also learn how to make a 911 call and actually say what happened.
Oh, yes.
I think I heard something does not get the police rolling. Mm-hmm.
No linear narrative either. I'm at my cousin's house and she made a great souffle and also I heard noise and it's just like, no, I think I heard shots. Just get it out.
Yeah.
And really, in a neighborhood, you heard multiple shots. And they said they had, two 911 calls beforehand?
Yeah. Two to two different dispatchers. So it seems like it was a bigger mistake than they're saying, but at the same time, just wow.
Mistakes happen. Sometimes PDs don't get out. Again, sometimes the story they were given didn't seem like an emergency. And some people suck at their jobs. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's all of that. You're on your own. We continually tell people that in the industry, regardless of anything. And again, only 2 people called in Dallas. So what did everyone else do? Just, that sounds like a problem.
Yeah.
I'm not calling.
To be fair, I live in a neighborhood in the South, and I hear gunshots fairly regularly. And you're not supposed to discharge firearms in this area, and somebody's taking a possum usually. Like,
interesting.
It's totally different.
It happens.
I live in Jersey. I hear multiple freaking gunshots. Something's on. Nobody's shooting a possum.
I live in Colorado.
I've definitely been working out on my bike or something at like 2 a.m, trying to get something ready for the next day, and I'll just hear pop, and I'm like, yeah, somebody just got that possum finally. Like, you can just tell it's like a 22 or some like old 32 rifle or something. Like, I got neighbors that are just like, I got one last night, and I'm like, I heard. I mean, I'm in suburbia. I'm not even in the woods. Like, I'm half mile from the mall. Like,
nice.
That's awesome. This is a good time for me to say that we're going to start talking about second call defense on this show, which is self-defense insurance. And honestly, with police response times of almost an hour, like it made me think, how alone we are, not just at the point to where we actually have to use our firearms for self-defense, but after that. The cops show up, they question. This wasn't a priority for the dispatchers up front, but when people actually got there, there's going to be questioning. And if you have to defend your own life, how do you navigate all the legal aspects of everything that's going to go on? And how do you pay for it? And how do you pay, for criminal, if they file criminal or civil charges, how do you pay for the defense of all that and even possibly damages? And that's what second call defense does, is they support you day one, $1. You're never out of pocket. They make sure that you're covered. They make sure that your bail, your bond, everything is paid up front. They pay for expert witnesses, crime scene cleanup, depending on the level that you get. And it's incredibly inexpensive, like just a little bit over $10 a month for their just regular basic coverage. And it's just huge for me. I mean, we've got homeowners insurance. We've got car insurance. Have self-defense insurance, because just in case something does go wrong, something bad does happen, make sure you're protected. Go to firearmsradio.tv/SCD and get a free month just for signing up today. It is time to move into our I'm Offended segment. This one, guys, LA City Councilman wants vendors and eventually employees to report if they are affiliated with the NRA. Which just, my head exploded.
Do they give their own justification for why? Like, do they say why?
Councilman said if passed into law, it would not ban NRA connected contractors from doing business with the city, but require them through a new ordinance to disclose any contracts or sponsorships they have with the gun rights advocacy group. And it looks like they actually did this before with something else. They're not saying that they would ever stop people from working, but it kind of clear that they're not going to choose people who fill out those disclosure forms.
But it's like weird. Why though? It's one of those things like, we want you to disclose X. Oh, okay. Why? Yeah. Well, we're not going to do anything with it. Yeah, but why do I need to disclose X? Is it a security risk? Is it something like, just disclose X?
Well, this is, the city council approved a similar ordinance last year that requires contractors or prospective contractors to disclose that they have placed bids on President Donald Trump's border wall. Although it did not place a ban on them working with the city, the ordinance sent the message that Los Angeles would be unlikely to hire a contractor with ties to the wall. So not just now contractors who bid on building something that, that is driven by our executive branch of government, but, now the NRA. Now, if you support and I imagine donations, any of that as a contractor, you're going to have to submit that now. And clearly they're not going to choose you.
Look, I get it. Okay. What if South Carolina came out with a regulation that said, we want you to disclose whether or not your company existed during the Civil War and provided weapons to Union troops? Okay. I can understand why this is outrageous is what I'm saying. But, just from any possible perspective, this thing of, I need to know your political allegiances before I will give you money for work is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I understand a private entity trying to build a work culture, not wanting to have people who are going to undermine their work culture. I get that. but you're a government entity. You should definitely be politically neutral. Like, it's bizarre. I could see the argument for a private entity doing something like this, even though I think it's distasteful.
Yeah.
But as a government entity, no, you have to be politically neutral. Government entities showing favoritism towards certain politics is the death of a democracy like ours. Like, it is absolutely the death of free speech.
Tony Simon?
Many people aren't going to be offended by this that live in LA. All right. It's not going to bother them at all because, NRA is somehow a terrorist group. I love they painted NRA members as terrorists. The NRA is a terrorist group. Everything's cool until they come after the thing you believe in. Understand that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this is nothing but a way to harass gun owners and NRA members. But then they go after GOA. They go after anything they don't believe in. Are you a member of the Republican Party? I mean, it just becomes that kind of, almost like the communist hunts in the 50s. You know what I mean? You're going to get blacklisted. That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
And it's not going to work out well for them.
Yeah. I mean, just truly awful in my opinion. Oh, it's bad stuff. Next up is our full on news segment, just stories that the other media doesn't talk about. Only we're crazy enough to actually talk about this kind of silly stuff. And that brings me to my first one, which is 19-year-old Florida man shoots 8-month-old puppy as its owner is walking it. And holy moly, this is awful. These people basically moved in the day before. They're walking their dog, a tiny little 8-month-old puppy, and it looks to be just like a tiny little dog. And this dude apparently says in Spanish in the house, I'm going to shoot the dog, goes out there with a pellet rifle, shoots the dog, basically takes a knee, takes aim, shoots the dog. The dog suddenly just starts having progressive respiratory distress and spitting up blood, and the owners have no idea what happened. They weren't aware that the dog had been shot. And, just like, how awful of a human being do you actually have to be to do something like this?
Was there any justification for it listed?
Did nothing.
Wanted to shoot him.
Yeah, just wanted to shoot the dog.
I mean, there might have been some back issue pooping on the sidewalk, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's always weird to me when it's that random.
I know.
Like, there was no argument about dog poop or nothing. Like, it went straight to this.
They just moved into the neighborhood the day before. I was thinking the same thing as you were.
From out of state.
Like, from out of town.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe the dog had barked at night or something like that. It's not mentioned in this article at all. And I read it twice just to be sure that there was no possible motivation that they mentioned. And yeah, none. Family moved in. The next day after they move in, they're walking their dog. Some dude walks out on his balcony, takes aim with a pellet rifle and ends the dog's life.
We're talking about can you strip Second Amendment rights from a DUI? This is one of those cases where you go,
yes.
Like, I don't want to go after someone's Second Amendment rights, but this is violence and sort of a narcissism, like a narcissistic violence.
Mm-hmm.
This is an indicator of someone who is going to murder or hurt somebody. Like, this is a sign of someone who is potentially homicidal. Not getting drunk, but, actually going out and being violent towards animals or being, this disrespectful to somebody else's property, even if you don't think animals are anything other than property. Like, this is the level of self-obsession and dangerous that I don't necessarily like being out there. And
not just clear violence, but just like such random and heinous violence without even trying to hide it. Like, just, you know what? I'm going to shoot that dog going out there and then just kill the animal.
How's this? If that dog barked all night and kept you up, you would at least go and knock on the neighbor's door. You know what I mean?
Oh, without question.
Your dog kept me up all night, and it would be a slow build to I'm going to shoot that dog. This was a person with a real mental problem, and they didn't even use a real firearm. They used a pellet rifle, which means if you stripped away their Second Amendment rights, they would still have the pellet rifle when it was set, except in New Jersey, when it was said and done.
Yeah. Yeah. This is clearly, I mean, we would go and say, hey, your dog barked all night and kept me up. Can you do something about that? Because we're human beings. This is not a human being. This is a Florida man.
Love that.
Awful.
Tony, what's your story?
Oh, dude, Florida woman
yes.
cuts man's face after he refuses to have sex with her.
What?
Yeah, so it's not that great of a story. I mean, that was it, lady named Catherine, 27 years old. It's not a lot here. She's charged with battery, assault with a deadly weapon. Guy was hospitalized after she requested several times to have sex with him. The police were called out at 3:30 a.m. on a Thursday. The guy was standing in the doorway bleeding with his face covered in blood and said, "She hit me with a knife. I can't see." The man had several cuts to his face and was treated at a local hospital. And she's booked on $15,000 bail.
Dang.
I'm looking at her and I'm like, wow. A guy looked at her and went, "I don't care if you have a knife."
Yeah, I'm not going to.
I don't care. I'm not going to have sex with you.
Well, because the first thing I thought, I was like, okay, well, she's got to be hideous. And then I went over to the article, I clicked on it, I looked for a second, I was like, I'd smash.
Mm-hmm.
No, here's the thing. You guys are missing context because this is something Susie likes to say. So don't shoot the messenger here. But there's a spectrum of crazy for women. And the funny thing is, if they're completely sane, rational women, they're not as attractive to men. Men have an attraction towards insane women. And her thing is, there's a fine and slightly mixed line between, let's say, sexually exploratory women and women who will literally burn your house down.
Yeah.
And she says it much more profanely than that, and Shawn's heard it before.
I have.
But it's interesting, but as a male, a lot of people run into the problem of, I would like someone who is very experimental, but that also seems to coincide with a lot of potentially dangerous attributes. Apparently the man she cut must have had enough sense to realize that she was dangerously insane and said, no, because if I interact with you sexually, then I will be stuck with you in some regard. I'm going to avoid this kind of craziness. And he was immediately proved right by the fact that she stabbed him. So, good on him for saying no. This is a very rational man.
True.
And I will say, whether she's attractive or not, if you guys ever get a chance to look up this photo, she looks like she's already done with the being photographed for the police station. Like the police photo is her just being like kind of cocky, bored.
Yeah, smug.
And yeah, this is not, she's way too cool with being arrested right now. Like, this is someone I don't want to mess with.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
I'm looking at her going, this is a picture and I don't want to mess with this lady. So what kind of vibe in real life must she give off for you to realize at 3:00, man, I have to get this woman out of my house and I'll probably die trying to do it. But I'd rather do that than have sex with her.
It's just crazy. But look, guys.
To be fair, I mean, do you want to expose like your covered body? Like, do you want to be in a fight for your life with your penis out or with your penis tucked away safely? Like,
well, I speaking, and I'm not going to go into the whole story, but I did get into a fight completely nude one time. I was completely nude. The individual I was fighting was not. And,
okay.
It was awkward, man. It was actually really tough. I ended up having to jump out of a second story window completely nude at the same, in the same thing.
Are you telling this story, or you're just baiting the entire audience?
I'm just baiting the entire audience. True story. Actually happened. Multiple witnesses, and many can corroborate, unlike Kavanaugh's accusers. But I gotta say,
why were you nude with a bunch of witnesses?
Coolest church ever.
Here's the thing.
Wait. Is Shawn the guy from Naked Fight Club?
No. No.
He's the Grease Naked Man.
No. I gotta say though, he was gonna get stabbed either way, guys. It would have been better if he would have at least, been able to have intercourse before.
No, I'm not. Hey, do not, gentlemen out there, please do not hang your genitals out when you might get stabbed. Like, that is not a good, genitals in for stabbing.
Agreed 100%. Oh, that's awful. Othias, what's your story?
I had actually down in Brazil, the police seized a M2 Browning, which is a 50 caliber machine gun. In case you're not keeping up, I think most people would know what M2 is that listen to this show. And this is, this is par for the course for Brazil. They have a lot of illegal weapons that come through, but what really stands out about this is yes, it's a fully automatic M2 Browning in 50 caliber that was just sort of smuggled in. The other thing though is it's just caused a lot of people to be confused as to how it even got there, because it's an ANM2, which is an aircraft version with a higher cyclic rate and lighter barrel, and it's also set up to be fired from a solenoid if possible from World War II. So it's a sort of World War II era M2 Browning 50 cal that the police are like, you're not supposed to have this.
Jeez.
And so, I mean, it looks like they managed to seize all of 7 rounds with it, so I guess it wasn't that dangerous. but I think this kind of speaks back to you can ban whatever you want to ban. It'll turn up. Like, if it's out there, it'll turn up.
Yep. Like Jeff Goldblum said in Jurassic Park, life will find a way.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty nuts. I wish I could find something like that, in my neighborhood. Well, no, actually, because I don't want to spend the rest of my life in jail, but.
Well, I'm looking at it like this. Brazil got a lot of fighter planes from us post-World War II because we handed them out all over the world post-World War II, especially South and Central America. I mean, they were using prop planes in the 60s when, Honduras and I think El Salvador went to war, and they were using like P-51 Mustangs in the 60s. So most guns from World War II had at least 6 of these on there. So there should be like 5 more minimum floating around somewhere. I'm just saying.
This is definitely something that got smuggled off an army truck. Like somebody sold this out of Brazilian Army or Navy inventory. Well,
I've worked Marine Corps Aviation, and while we were doing inventory, we found a Pegasus motor from a Harrier, from the first generation of Harrier, that had been in the warehouse for, at that time, 20 years. Because it was so big, it's sitting on the floor in a crate. So pretty much everyone just put cushions on it eventually, and that became the shop bench. And we looked down and it was like, wait a minute. This is still like a real piece of gear. Yeah. So that could happen. That gets pushed to the back of the warehouse. That becomes a prop. That becomes a coat hanger. You know what I mean? Because it's a 50 cal prop in the corner.
Somebody goes, hey, where'd the couch go? And it's like, oh, no, it's just a couch. Oh, well, it's just some old box. We don't know what was in it.
Exactly. And there you go.
So crazy. All right, guys.
Shawn, where is this chat happening that I see on the screen?
It's on the actual YouTube video.
Oh, okay. So if people want to chat, they can go over to YouTube.
Yeah, people can chat on YouTube and it shows up live on our screen, which actually for this show, probably pretty safe. Other shows on the network, not as safe.
Sorry, for those listening at home, because it's podcast format, there are people asking about the background because I'm in my studio space. So we filmed a history show here. That's why there's so many guns.
Well, tell us about it, Othias.
We do a World War I history show right now on firearms. So we do long format documentaries, usually like 45 minutes we've gone over 2 hours before if the material's there. And we just walk down everything we know about each gun from World War I so far. One day we'll get a World War I, but for now we're trying to get a complete picture of this because I don't know of anybody sitting down and really going through the firearms of World War I. I've had people ask me, is there a book out there for World War I firearms? And I go, no. There's like one that kind of covers pistols for the most part, and then there's some that are specialized by country, but there isn't one volume of book that covers all of the World War I firearms. So when we're done, we'll probably have to put out a book, I guess. But for now, if you'd like to start to get into a real deep dive into a bunch of firearms, sort of right at it's really when the things that become modern firearms start to settle. Like it's really the dust is settling by 1918, 1919. And what we see after that is mostly an evolution of concepts that were discovered and played with in World War I being refined from there. So, we get your first submachine gun in there. We get arguably the first assault rifles there. So there's a lot to cover.
That is so awesome. I love it. Actually, I texted you a couple of weeks ago because I was actually driving to the airport, which is about an hour and a half. And it just so happened that morning, the first thing in my YouTube list was just you and someone else talking about bolt actions. For basically an hour and a half, or 2.5 hours, yeah, which is just awesome. And I found it fascinating. So go check it out. Primer, search for that. And C&Rsenal, C&Rsenal. Google either one of those and you can find all of it, right?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I love it. Tony, what have you been up to?
About 465 at this point. I've dropped like 35 pounds in the last month.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah. What I've been up to tomorrow is going to be the Second is for Everyone diversity shoot at Gun for Hire Range in Woodland Park. What do? We welcome people from every background, regardless of age, sex, gender, sexual orientation, or background, political, financial, or otherwise, into the Second Amendment community, into the firearms community. We talk about a lot of different things at our events. We bring in NRA ILA to speak. We bring in local 2A groups to speak. Tomorrow, I'm going to have paperwork for residents in New Jersey. So if you want to get your pistol purchase permit, I'm going to have the paperwork to start the process. We're going to talk about legislation tomorrow. We're going to have food. We're going to have prizes, and we're going to have really cool guns that were donated by companies like Henry They donated some rifles to us, and we're going to have the 357 out there tomorrow. We're going to have the industry build, like Rob Smith donated an Adams Arms upper, and other people donated other parts. We built a rifle, and that's going to be there tomorrow too. So that's what we do. We introduce people to firearms. You can bring your mom, you can bring your friend, you can bring that guy from work. You don't have to coach them. We have NRA certified instructors that do that, and you can go shoot other guns. So it's a fun time.
I recommend that if you get an opportunity to do something like that and you have someone you want to introduce to guns, sometimes being the boyfriend or the husband or whatever, they won't listen to you no matter what.
So
it's
much
better
so.
just to get, and it's like any doofus on the street, it gets more respect than you do sometimes when you're close to somebody. Not that these guys are doofuses, but like it's just one of those things like anybody will do. And you guys know, like you know that some just interaction with a stranger is more important than your opinion sometimes. But where's that at again? Where's that?
This is at Gun for Hire Range, Woodland Park, New Jersey. You can pick up tickets on Eventbrite by Second is for every, go on Eventbrite, search for the Second is for Everyone, Woodland Park, New Jersey. Tickets are $20. It's like 3 or 4 hours. It's food, it's guns, it's fun. So yeah, for a night out, not bad in Jersey. $20.
That is
I'll
awesome.
feed you too.
I love it.
Not only that, but even if you can't make it, maybe think about supporting something like this because, organizations like this, like events like this, number one, they bolster the Second Amendment, but number two, don't forget things like what he's doing now. You're recognizing someone else's human right. You're recognizing that they are a human being. You're interacting with them. You're trying to build something to share with everyone so that we can get back to a base understanding of each other and sort of settle the dust that is kicked up around all this stuff that we have to hear about every day, thanks to sort of, clickbait news articles. This is the front line of peaceful coexistence, and people just don't want to see it that way. Like they'd rather just argue ideas on the internet all day. Whenever you have a program that wants to get in front of people and recognize their rights, maybe that's the time to throw in a little support.
Definitely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yep, you're right.
Tony, I hear people speaking about you all the time and they're like, oh yeah, Second is for Everyone. Awesome stuff. Tony's doing great stuff. And it makes me happy just to know that you're out there making a difference and people are seeing it, which is the prime reason that I even mentioned that. People are seeing it. I hear people talking and, they don't even know that I know you. And I hear them saying great things about you and what you guys are putting together out there.
Yeah, these guys are putting in a lot of work. It's not just me, and I say that continually. Everybody steps up. Everyone helps out. Like the money that comes into this goes right back into it. This year was the first time I actually get anything out of ticket sales. I did this for 3 years without anything. I just thought it was that important. So if people bought raffle tickets, yeah, okay, I got that, but that went back into the next raffle and food for the next event. Right now, this 2019 is going to be the year we finally become a 501c3. Paperwork is starting already.
Very, very awesome, man. Go check out both these guys and all the stuff they do. Two of my favorite panelists that we have on this show. And thanks to everyone for listening. Truly, truly appreciate it. Check out our advertisers, Patriot Patch Company. Go to patriotpatch.co. Also, Second Call Defense. Just think a little bit about it. Think about what would happen. We talk on this show, especially about a lot of self-defense situations and, sometimes the aftermath that comes after them, but it's definitely something to look into. Hope Second Call Defense has something that you're interested in. Go check them out. firearmsradio.tv/SCD. Don't wait till it's too late. And guys, we'll talk to you all next week. Don't forget, This Week in Guns is produced by Kenny Ortega and is a production of the Firearms Radio Network. We'll see you soon.